All right, hello ATM. This is going to be a video lesson over 3-8, the class portion. Today your only assignment is to watch this video while taking notes and then make sure you take a picture of your notes and submit it on Google Classroom. There will be points for that. So let's jump right into it. Congratulations, your boss thinks highly enough of your organizational skills to put you in charge of a gala to benefit a local no-kill shelter. You find an appropriate banquet hall and are told that hosting 150 people will cost $6,500. If you up the number of guests to 200, the bill jumps to $8,500. So number one says if you make the reasonable assumption that the relationship between the number of people and cost is linear, do we have enough information to find a model for the cost? By model, we mean an equation that provides the cost for a certain number of people. So from the information given, we have to decide, do we have enough information to be able to write an equation, a linear equation? They want to know, is it linear? Okay, so we have to think back to Algebra 1. Here's what we know so far. We know that 150 people cost $6,500. We know that 200 people cost $8,500. So if you think about it, the people can be your X values, the cost can be your Y value. So we have two ordered pairs. And if you have 2 points, then you can create a line. So my answer, I went ahead and wrote it ahead of time. Yes, we can write a model or an equation because we have 2 points on the line. So number 2 says which quantity should be the independent variable and which should be the dependent variable. Know that when you change the number of people, the cost is then also going to change, right? So I went ahead and wrote this one ahead of time as well. An increase in guests makes the cost change, so the number of guests is the independent variable and the cost is the dependent variable. The cost depends on the number of guests. So feel free to pause the video if you need more time to write. All right, moving on to number 3. It says, using your answer to question 2, write 2 points based on the cost information provided. Then use those 2 points to find the slope of the line. So the first point is if we have 150 people, the cost is $6,500. The other point is if we have 200 people, the cost is $8,500. So it says find the slope of the line. This we should be very familiar with, very comfortable with. Y2 minus Y1 over X2 minus X1. Subtract and divide. So our slope is 40. What does the slope tell us about the cost? The cost increases because it's positive by $40 for each extra guest. So it's about $40 per plate or per person. I don't know if they're eating a meal. All right, let's move on to question 5. It says, now the big question, can we find the equation of the line? If we knew the y-intercept, we'd be golden, but we don't. So we'll need to be a little clever. Using x for your independent variable and y for your dependent variable, write a generic equation for cost using the slope-intercept form. Then substitute in the slope you found and the information from one of the points. This will give you an equation that you can solve to find the y-intercept of the line. So that was actually very, very well explained. What we're basically going to do is we're going to take y equals mx plus b. We're going to take the slope that we just found for number 3. We got m equals 40, right? So we're going to put 40 in there. And then we're going to pick one of the equations. So remember we wrote down these 2 equations, we're going to pick one of the points. We can pick either point we want and we can plug that information in for x and y, okay? So we found that m equals 40, and then I'll just go ahead and pick the first point. You can pick the second point if you want, you'll end up with the same answer. So here's the m. Our job is to find the b. One of the ways to do that is to pick a point, call it x and y, and substitute that into y equals mx plus b. So y equals mx plus b would be 6,500 because that's the y. Y equals m, which is 40, times the x from the point, which is 150, plus the b, which we don't know. But now we only have one variable, so it's very easy to solve this equation. Multiply the 40 times the 150, and then subtract the 6,000 over, and we end up with 500 equals b. So now we can write our final equation. This particular problem says this will give you an equation that you can solve to find the y-intercept of the line. So let's just say the y-intercept, which is b, equals 0, 500. Okay. What does your y-intercept mean? Well, I hope it helps that I wrote it as an ordered pair because remember, x is the number of guests and y is the cost. So this means that 0 guests, because my x value is 0, will cost $500. This might be the starting deposit fee. Generally, they don't let you rent the room unless you put some sort of deposit down. Now number 7 wants us to write the full equation. So y equals m, which is 40, x plus the b that we found, which is 500. So this is the equation that we can use to predict how much it's going to cost for any amount of people. Okay. Now next in the textbook, they have the steps that we just followed. They have that listed in the textbook. So if you're a person that really likes to follow steps, feel free to write those in your notes or reference the page number if you would like. Okay, moving on to number 8. It says to graph the line that you found and then the 2 points you were originally given. If the line doesn't go through the points, what does that mean? Well, our equation was y equals 40x plus 500. So we can start at about 500. And then from there, we have to go up 40 over 1, up 40 over 1. And I'll be honest, this particular graph is not very easy to use in terms of counting, going up 40 and over 1. What you can do is you can use your calculator and you can you can graph it, 40x plus 500. Now to be able to view it, we're gonna have to zoom way out, but as long as we see that it's a line, we should be fine. So I'm gonna change my window to 0 for my X-min, and we need to go up to 250 for the X-max. And they went by 50s, so let's go by 50s for the X scale as well. For the Y scale, we'll start at 0 and we want to go all the way up to 9,000, and they went by 1,000. So I'm basically changing my window to look like this graph here so that I don't have to do it by hand. And let's go ahead and press graph. And we can see that it is a straight line. Okay. Now it wanted us to verify that the points from the beginning of the lesson are on the line. So for that one, I'm going to go back to number 3 where we wrote down the points, and I'm going to go to the table. Actually, I'm not going to do the table. If you press your calculate button, so second trace to go to calculate, you can enter any value you want. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter, and I'm going to type in the 150 and hope that we get the 6,500 out, and there it is. They've plotted it for us. We can do that again. So second trace, go to value, type in 200, and we verify that that point is on the line as well. So I think it's a little easier to use technology for number 8 instead of graphing it by hand. We can see that it's a line, and we saw that the 2 original points were on that line as well. All right, so I would say that we're going to move on to number 9, but I don't particularly like questions 9 through 12. So I went ahead and crossed out 9 through 11, and then I changed number 12. So I hope you guys are okay with that. We're skipping 9 through 11, and I changed number 12 to say redo question 5, but with point slope form. That's ultimately what they're wanting us to do for numbers 9 through 12, but I just feel like they do it in a really confusing way. So before we redo number 5, but with point slope form, I need to show you what point slope form is. I really hope you remember this from Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. It's y minus y sub 0 equals m times x minus x sub 0. Now in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, this was probably a 1 and this was probably a 1. But either way, the x1, y1 is the point that you're given. The m is the slope, and you can substitute it in like this, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go back to question 5. And remember, we knew the slope, but we did not know the y-intercept. Instead of doing it this way, using y equals mx plus b, you can use point slope. So that's what I'm gonna show you here, okay? So let's go back, and we're gonna pretend all we know is the slope, and we are looking for the b value. What we're gonna use is the 1 point, which was 150, 6,500. You have to pick a point. It doesn't matter which point, but now we're gonna use point slope form instead of y equals mx plus b. Oops, and here I go writing y equals y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So instead of using slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, we're gonna use point slope form. So it looks like this. Y minus the y value from my point, which is 6,500, equals my m, which was 40, times my x minus my x value from the point, which is 150. Now, instead of solving for b, like we did over here, we're just gonna simplify this equation, and we will be in slope-intercept form. So it's not really solving for b, it's just simplifying this, and when we're done, we will have the b value. So we can distribute the 40. 40x, and let me multiply that. We've got 40 times 150. That gives us negative 6,000. And now we can add the 6,500. And that gets us y equals 40x. And then if I add those together, that gets me plus 500. So this is the same equation we found before. And that tells us the b value is that 0, 500, which we discovered before using slope-intercept form. So I just wanted to be clear that there's 2 different ways to do this. You can use y equals mx plus b to find the b, or you can use point slope form. I personally prefer point slope form because I feel like over here you have to put everything in, you solve for b, and then you have to rewrite the equation, and a lot of students forget that last step to write that final equation. They find the b and they're like, oh, I'm done, and they circle their answer. But over here, you set it up, you simplify, and you're done. So I personally prefer this. But anyway, that's what this lesson was all about, is making sure you understand how to use point slope form. So there is a did you get it question at the very end. Number 1 says, write the point slope form of the equation describing the cost of the party using this point, 200, 8,500, and then show you get the same result by solving for y. So I'm going to basically redo number 12, but instead of using the first point, we're going to use the second point. So we know our m is 40, and we're going to use the other point, which is 200, 8,500. Okay? So y minus my 8,500 equals my m, which is 40, times x minus 200. So now I have y minus 8,500 equals 40x minus 8,000. I would add the 8,500 over, and I end up with y equals 40x plus 500. So it doesn't matter which point you use, you still end up with the same answer. Now number 2 is just a random extra practice problem. Find the equation of a line through the point -3, 8 with slope 5, but write your answer in slope-intercept form. So I'd like you guys to pause the video and try this one on your own, and then you can unpause and see how you did. So using this information here, we would write it as, so this is number 2, we would write it as y minus 8 Remember, it's always minus unless you're putting a negative number in. The slope is 5 times x minus, and here's where I have to change the sign. Because I'm plugging a -3 in and it's already minus, it's going to turn it into a plus. So I hope you remember that from Algebra 1 and Algebra 2. Now they say they want the answer in slope-intercept form, so I do need to distribute and add the 8 over. And so that gets me y equals 5x plus 23. All right, I hope that makes sense. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and make sure you take a picture of your notes and submit them on Google Classroom. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.